Good evening and thank you for attending tonight's City Council meeting. For those who are attending remotely, the camera in council chambers is set up to show those attending in person tonight. The platform we are using has a raised hand feature. You will notice a picture of a hand in the upper right-hand corner. When we reach the point in the meeting where the public has the opportunity to address council, you can click that button to be given your opportunity to address council. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Kevin, would you please call the roll?
Mayor Tully.
Here.
Councilor Silly.
Here.
Councilor Powers.
Here.
Councilor Scamperly.
Here.
Councilor Stevenson. Here. Councilor Tebow.
Here.
Councilor Trim. Quorum present.
We have two proclamations this evening. The first is for the Friends of Libraries Week, and I will make that proclamation now. Whereas Friends of the Ogdensburg Public Library raise money that enables our library to move from good to great, providing the resources for additional programming, much needed equipment, support for children's summer reading, and special events throughout the year. And whereas the work of the Friends highlights on an ongoing basis the fact that our library is the cornerstone of the community, providing opportunities for all to engage in the joy of lifelong learning and connect with the thoughts and ideas of others from ages past to the present. Whereas the Friends understand the critical importance of well-funded libraries and advocate to ensure that our library gets its resources it needs to provide a wide variety of services to all ages, including access to print and electronic materials, along with expert assistance in research, readers advisory, and children's services. And whereas the Friends' gift of their time and commitment to the library sets an example for all in how volunteerism leads to positive civic engagement and the betterment of our community. Now therefore be it resolved that I, Michael J. Tully, Mayor of the City of Ogdensburg, proclaim October 19th through October 25th, 2025 as Friends of Libraries Week in Ogdensburg, and urge everyone to join the Friends of the Library and thank them for all they do to make our library and community so much better. In witness whereof I appear unto set my hand and cause this seal to be affixed. So again, on behalf of City Council and management of the city, our sincere appreciation to the work of Friends of the Library, Library Board, Library Management for the vital services it provides to our citizens. The next proclamation is for J. Frank Schwartz Day, and I will make that proclamation now. Whereas J. Frank Schwartz will be honored by friends and relatives on the occasion of his 100th birthday on October 27, 2025. And whereas Frank owned and operated Frank's the Decorator Corner at 214 Hamilton Street for decades. During his time in business, Frank founded the downtown Ogdensburg Energetic Retailers, known as Doers, and was involved with the New York State Retail Merchants Association. Whereas Frank was an active member and former president of the Ogdensburg Chamber of Commerce and the Society of the United Helpers, and upon his retirement in 1996, Frank was named the Chamber's Citizen of the Year for his lifetime career of service to his hometown. And whereas Frank was a member of the Ogdensburg Rotary Club for nearly 40 years, serving as president and receiving the Paul Harris Award, the highest form of recognition the Rotary Club can bestow. And whereas in 1963, Frank helped organize a small group that created the Ogdensburg Community Players, now known as Ogdensburg Command Performances, where under his leadership, this organization brought world-class performing arts to our city to the enjoyment of many, with a lasting impact on thousands of children who were exposed to theater, symphonies, dance, and more. And OCP recognizes Frank's contributions by naming its Frankie Award after him. And whereas in the 1970s, Frank was part of a small group that saved Ogdensburg Seaway Festival through various fundraising efforts, instituting the festival's Button Blitz, and by serving on the committee that brought top drum corps from across North America to perform during Festival Week as they traveled to their Drum Corps International competition in Montreal. And whereas the city of Ogdensburg continues to benefit from his years of unselfish, dedicated contributions to its business and arts communities. Now therefore, I, Michael J. Tooley, Mayor of the city of Ogdensburg, do hereby deem it an honor and pleasure to issue this proclamation honoring Frank Schwartz on the occasion of his 100th birthday and proclaim October 27, 2025, J. Frank Schwartz Day in the city of Ogdensburg. In witness whereof I have hereunto set my hand to cause this seal. And again, to Frank and his family, certainly someone who dedicated so much of his life to the community. I think we have all our own personal experiences growing up or living in the community when he was around. I know my personal participation, the opportunities provided for kids through Missoula Theater and things of that nature. He was the one who planted and nurtured the seed for many of them. So again, an honor to honor Frank in this way. We have one presentation today that is from City Manager Fina Cronus regarding the 2026 recommended city budget.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Much appreciated for the time. I am pleased to present to council and the public today the fiscal year 2026 recommended city manager's budget. And I want to take some time, maybe a little bit more time than I usually would in a presentation, to go over this document. Because it is really our fundamental fiscal document, and I really think we should put in the time and go through the details on it. So this will go a little longer than usual, but I think it's important to do. And before I move forward, I want to thank the department heads and the staff who worked on the budget very much. This document is as much theirs as it is the city managers, and I certainly couldn't get done without their help. Show my appreciation. So they had to listen to me beat them up line by line, and that certainly is a testament to their patience. Go to slide 2. Lots of takeaways in the budget, but probably the one that's most important is the headline of the tax rate is going to drop by.
Excuse me, Fonda, could you adjust your microphone? People are messaging me saying you couldn't hear me. Thank you so very much.
I don't even, whoa,
Maybe too much.
how's that?
Thank you.
Now it's working. Okay. And so the big takeaway here is the tax rate is going down 9.8%. And although I will applaud any situation where the tax rate goes down because it generally means some tax relief for our residents, I think it's important for us to understand why that happened. And so I'm actually going to skip a couple of slides that we'll get back to. And Kathy, I'll ask you to go to slide 5. Slide 5. So if you're following Home Alone, we're on slide 5.
Well, I guess I'll have to talk louder.
May I?
It might be bad. Testing. Testing. All right. I would hate for everybody at home to miss this riveting presentation. So the tax rate itself is based on 2 numbers, and it's a fraction. The top number of the fraction is the levy. That's the number that City Council determines that they are going to require taxpayers to pay, and that's the property tax levy. The bottom number is the total value of parcels, their assessments, all added up throughout the city. And so you take the levy, you divide it by the valuation, and multiply it by 1,000 to get your tax rate. So, for example, for this year, 2025, you can see the levy number there. It's $5,599,055, and our total taxable assessed valuation was $356,752 and some change. And when you do the math on that, your tax rate is $15.69. So it's a math equation with a fraction, a top number, and a bottom number. Let's look at what the recommended budget does on that fraction. So the top number stays virtually unchanged, it's $67 less. So in the budget world, that's a flat rate, no real change. The bottom number, however, increases by $39 million. We're talking a little bit about why that happens, but when you do the math on that, that tax rate calculates out to be $14.15 or a 9.8% decrease. Again, anytime we can lower the tax rate for our residents, it's a good thing, but it's also very important to understand why that number went down. Because as you can see, we didn't take any less from our property owners, right? The levy remained virtually the same. So there was no real technical tax relief, but the tax rate going down could mean that some taxpayers are going to see lower tax bills this year. Let's talk about why that $39 million increase in valuations happened. I don't think any of us can look around and say, as we drive through the city of Ogdensburg, that our property's got 11% more wealthy, more valuable over time. That's not what happened. I wish it was what happened, but it wasn't. We have a new assessor, a full-time assessor, and that assessor rolled up her sleeves and did what she should have done, which is make sure that all of the property transfers over the years have been put into the system, that building permits and new building additions were put onto the assessments. And when she did all of this work, the valuations went up $39 million. This is what I would consider a one-time administrative correction, a catch-up, if you will, and not necessarily the function of our economy getting stronger or our property tax burden going down by any stretch. But we'll take it as a win for this year, but let's keep it in context. It is not a win for more than just this year. Okay, so let's go back to slide 2, if you will. Actually, we'll go to slide 3. Sorry about that. So I think there are 2 overarching concerns that we need to continue to think about as we go through our budget process and as we go through the fiscal management of the city. And the first is the constitutional tax limit, or what we call in the business the CTL. Now, for those of you who aren't familiar with that, the CTL is basically a top line number calculated through a formula that says that the city can only raise a certain level and it cannot go over that. And if the closer you get to that number, think of it like a credit card. The closer you get to your limit, the less flexibility you have. And if you don't have any cash in the bank and you rely on a credit card, your car breaks down, and you need to put new brakes on it, and you don't have a credit card, you're in trouble, right? You can't do that. Same deal here. As we get closer and closer to that upper limit, when something happens and we need to raise more funds through the property tax, that is not available to us because we get too close to our CTL limit. So when I started in 2024, the CTL was 94%, if memory serves me. This year, we were able to get that down to 88.25%. And this recommended budget further reduces that to 82%. And we had this conversation last year where we said, we want to get to 80% as soon as we can, because that's kind of the upper benchmark from the New York State Comptroller's Office. And so we're getting there. So we see some progress. So that's some good news. But we need to put that news into perspective. And what I did was I did a little research on all New York State cities and what their CTL is. And the average of all cities in New York State, and there are 59 of them, is 62%. So we're 20 points higher than everybody else. And so although I like the trend going down, there's a lot of work to do here. So we really can't raise the levy to pay for our increases in costs. And we know costs are going up all the time, and the levy is not our friend in this. We can't continue to raise the levy to do that. And just to put into perspective where we are, there are only 11 communities that have a higher CTL ratio than we do out of the 59 cities in New York State. So Kathy, we can go to the next slide, please. I talk about this. I'm sure council's sick of hearing it. I'm sure the department heads are as well. But our budgets continue to not be structurally balanced. And what do I mean by that? Yes, our budget says the number of revenue dollars equals the number of our expense dollars, so we are balanced. But we are utilizing one-time dollars from our savings account and from other funds to balance our general fund and some of our other funds. And what that means is we're taking money out of savings to cover costs that continue year after year after year. Think about it in your electric bill. let's say your salary covers every one of your expenses except your electric bill, and you have to dip into your savings every month, a couple $100s at a time to pay that National Grid bill. All right, you grab the $200 out of your savings, you pay it this month, you're $200 less in your savings account, but that bill comes in, it's another $200. You're still not making enough money, so you have to go in and grab another $200. Eventually, that savings account, if you don't do something for your salary, is going to be zero, and we don't want to be in that position. So being in structural balance is critical. And so what I would say to that is a couple of things. The first thing you've heard me say a lot is the city's tax base cannot afford the cost of city government. And that's very evident with the fact that we've run deficits since 2022. The second thing I would say is that our revenue realities, we do not share sales tax with the county anymore. And that costs us anywhere between $1.8 and $2 million in revenues annually because we don't have that sharing relationship anymore. That's a revenue reality. And our continual cost and contractual obligations don't reflect those realities, and they need to start doing that. And as those contracts come up, those are some situations where we have to address them. So those are kind of the two takeaways there. So the CTL, structural imbalance, are the two underlying stories here that really should really be weaved through this whole budget process. So Kathy, if you go, we'll just hit slide 5 really quick, just to remind everybody of the tax rate decline, and then go right to slide 6. So there is a tax rate decrease, and so that should generate property tax savings for a certain number of residents. Now, this is a chart that you can't take to the bank because there's always circumstances and situations. But what I would say is, in general, we'll take an example. If your house was assessed for $125,000 in this year's tax bill, and it's assessed for the same amount, $125,000 in 2026's tax bills, you should see a decline of just under $200 in your tax bill. I know it's not enough to cover your mortgage in most cases, but I'd rather have $200 in my pocket than not have it in my pocket. So it's somewhat of a win. But let's temper that with some of the other things that we have to consider. So Kathy, if you go to the next slide. Water and sewer rates in this recommended budget go up, and they go up considerably. Everybody seems to say that we need to run government like a business. It's really hard to run a fire department or a police department like a business because they don't necessarily produce widgets, right? They don't produce a car, or they don't produce a hammer. They provide a service, they provide public safety, and that's a more amorphous thing. But the water and sewer funds produce a widget. They produce a gallon of water, right? That's the unit that they produce. So you can run these two funds like a business, and we should run it like a business. And that means that we need to make sure that our costs are covered by our revenues, and maybe we have a little bit left over at the end of the year to put into savings for unanticipated expenses, to pay for capital costs, maybe a vehicle, maybe a piece of equipment that needs repair, or maybe a piece of equipment that needs replacing. We need to have those dollars in savings, so when those things happen, it's not a big surprise, and I'll say, oh my God, where are we going to get the money for this? That's how you run a business in the public sector. And so what we did is we took for both the water and the sewer fund, we said, what are all of our costs? We added them all up. Then we said, okay, what are all the other little revenues that we get? And we subtracted it out of there. And we ended up with a required amount of revenue that we had to raise in our rates, our water rates and our sewer rates. And so as you can see on the charts, we needed for the water fund a little under $2.6 million in rate revenue, and just under $3.7 million in the sewer fund. And so we allocated that need across, and we get a number of different rates, of course, because we have a number of different services. Some people are metered, most people are not. If you're metered, you have different size meters, and those all have different rates. We'll just take the vast majority of folks, they get an unmetered service, so it's a flat rate. On the water side of things, to run these funds like a business, the water service needs to go up $52 a year, and the sewer service for unmetered folks needs to go up $71 per year. That's $123, and I understand that is significant. I pay it too. I'm a member of the community as well. And I never want to sit up here and say we have to raise rates. I hate to do it. but we also have to cover our costs, and this is how we do it. So this recommended budget, it has a deliberate strategy of taking and delivering a property tax decrease and right-sizing our water and sewer rates and taking the hit this year where it doesn't hurt the residents and the taxpayers as much as it might in another year where there's a tax increase. It's a deliberate strategy. So if we go to slide 8, please, this is an extended view of the property tax that also takes into account those increases in the water and the sewer. And there is a misprint on this, I apologize. On the column that says increase of water and sewer, all of those numbers should say $123. Somehow my copy and paste didn't work and my eyes didn't work either in proofreading. So if we were to take that same $125,000 home and we see that the difference on the property tax would be a decline of $193, and then we add to it that $123, an increase in the water and sewer, there's still about a $70 savings. So certainly not as much as it used to be, but this is a way we can right size our water and sewer rates and not hurt the vast majority of taxpayers. Kathy, if we'll go to slide 9, the next couple of slides, I'll breeze through relatively quickly. Certainly there's a lot of data on these slides, but suffice it to say that the point on costs are our contractual obligations really put pressure on our costs. We have very little control over about 75% of our budget between personnel, contractual costs, benefits that we don't have a lot of control over, and debt service, which we have absolutely no control over. That's about 75% of our budget, which doesn't leave much left for discretion to be able to cut. And so that's kind of the takeaway on costs. We know our contractual obligations increase every year, and so we have to find it in other areas, generally in equipment and operational contractual costs, and that defers maintenance, and that really forces some choices from the service side of things. Going to slide 10, Kathy, if we look at revenues, the real takeaway here is that our revenues aren't growing, right? And sales tax is really the main culprit for that. Obviously, the preemption in 2022 was a big problem for us from a sales tax standpoint. But recently, with fewer Canadian traffic and them spending less money here in the city, we certainly see that our sales tax numbers for this year are down as well. And I think we're going to have about a $200,000 or so hole in our budget with revenues this year coming from the sales tax, and that really hurts us in the long run. So what we have is a picture where our expenditures, especially on the contractual obligation side of things, continue to grow, and our revenues are flat to maybe down a little bit, and that is the perfect definition of structural imbalance. Slide 11 goes through a number of policy recommendations within the recommended budget. I'm not going to go through them all. The write-up, the budget message that I put together and we have published on the website and have been given to council, go through all of those in very much detail. So just to save some time, we'll skip over that slide. But I do want to talk about fund balance a little bit because this is generally a question that comes up from council. It's a little early to try and predict what fund balance is going to look at, but we took a shot at it anyway. So we'll just go through the chart real quick. At the beginning of the year, our fund balance all in, not necessarily all spendable, but all in is about $4.6 million. The best we can calculate with the data we have now is we believe in the general fund, we're going to have a deficit of about $104,000. That number clearly is going to change as we get more details and information, but that's our best estimate right now. And so when you subtract your fund balance and your deficit together, you get about $4.5 million. Not all of that is spendable, of course, and you can see all the different categories where money is already obligated, anywhere from the unspendable all the way down to our different reserves. And what's left over is what I call discretionary fund balance, but in the business they call it unassigned fund balance. It's about $3.5 million. And generally speaking, we benchmark that against next year's appropriations in the recommended budget, and you get a percentage. And I like that percentage to be somewhere between 20 and 25%. That's just my personal professional preference. There are other ratios that certainly make sense. And so if you look at that number, that says, well, 24% is certainly in the high end of that range. Fund balance looks good. And on the surface, under normal circumstances, that's a very good number. I'd feel confident. But this is Ogdensburg, so there's always a but. So let's see what the but is on lucky number page 13. The Development Authority recently provided us with an asset management plan. And that basically said, here's what you have for capital needs, and this is what it's going to cost you. And years and decades of deferred maintenance and not dealing with our assets and upgrading our capital assets means that we probably need about $14.9 million just to make ourselves square with all of our different buildings and equipment and vehicles and the big loaders that we have and the plow trucks and everything in between. $14.9 million just makes us square. That pays the old bill and the bill that's currently coming due. We also have a future bill that we have to think about. So we should be socking away, according to the Development Authority, about $620,000 every single year just to take care of the future costs of these things once, because let's face it, a vehicle doesn't last forever. Roofs don't last forever. Buildings crumble. We have to upgrade things. HVAC units fail. So we need to set aside a certain amount, and the Development Authority has calculated that to be about $620,000. So if we were to borrow $14.9 million and pay it back over 20 years, that would increase our debt service cost by $1.2 million a year for the next 20 years. Now you add the $620,000 on top of it, that's a 30% levy increase. That blows away our CTL, that blows away our fund balance, it blows away our fiscal sanity. And that's obviously not sustainable. What we do know, though, is at least now we have these numbers quantified and we can tackle it. So I am very happy to say that our tax rate went down. And I'm very happy for those who are going to get a property tax reduction for 1 year because of it. But that does not mean that we're out of the fiscal cliff, right? We're still right there on the precipice between our capital needs, between our CTL, and between our structural imbalances. We have a long ways to go. And I think I will stop with the doom and gloom there and offer if anyone has any comments or any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
Thank you for the presentation, Fonda. Council, any questions or comments at this time?
So Fonda, I guess I would ask, when I'm listening, and I too want the tax rate to go down, but what I'm hearing, and please correct me if I'm misunderstanding, that right now we're trying to write the water and sewer increases with trying to keep people's taxes pretty much even with that, but that going future that we still are in financial straits and that we may be looking at future increases in our tax rate.
That's a loaded question.
I know it is.
And we have to take this incrementally. The city did not get into its financial perils overnight, right? It took years and years to get there. And so we're not going to fix this thing overnight. There's no magic bullet. There's no lottery to be won. In my opinion, and this is certainly what I will recommend to council, and it's my hope that council agrees with me, that because we have to take this one bite of the apple at a time, the things to address are, let's get our business type funds where they need to be so they're not generating deficits year after year. Let's deal with the CTL because we don't have a lot of room. We can't raise the rate. We can't raise the levy if we're at 95%, right? So that's kind of job one, and job 1A is let's get structurally balanced so that we have a recurring revenue base that covers our recurring revenue or our recurring expenses. I think those are jobs 1A, and 2, and those are things that we can do over time and do relatively quickly. And I use relative in air quotes because it's hard to do and it's not going to be done in a day or two. It's certainly going to take years. But I think that's what we do in the interim. And once we have some room in the CTL, then we can talk about levy increases over time. And ideally what I'd like to do is, as that valuation number increases, that maybe that's the room where you can increase your levy to and see where it goes. The key, however, though, is in the interim is we've got to get our contractual obligations to mirror our revenue realities. And that's not where we are right now.
Thank you.
Anyone else?
Of course.
Is there a chance that we go back to sharing tax revenue with the county? Is that, we're trying, I think, are we trying to do that, or?
Well, right now, there's state legislation that really doesn't allow that to happen. And there doesn't seem to be an appetite on the county side to do that. But we're certainly always open to having those conversations. And I think there's some structural things that we need to do prior to that to make that happen. There's really no motivation for the county to do that. But, you know, if there's a will, we should have those conversations. But I would not count on that.
My initial impression is that, I really, to echo Fonda's appreciation for what staff did, teaming with him to bring this proposed budget for 2026 to council for consideration, to the public for consideration, to voice their opinions to us as we proceed over the next couple of weeks. The fact that, we see dwindling resources, the reduction in the sales tax budget by $150,000, trying to right size use of fund balance, reducing our use of fund balance by $200,000. We're able to maintain a stable tax levy and no service cuts, no staff layoffs. I think it speaks to the efforts of our management team to try to keep us in the short term functioning as best we can for the services we provide as government to our citizens, and as well a focus on the long term. Again, trying to right size, get into truly balanced budget in all our funds. Attack that constitutional tax limit, and continue to try incrementally over time to reduce that number, and I think there's some energy in our management team now, to move the city forward, and I think council recognizes that. So, and just remind the public that this Thursday at 4:00 will be our first workshop to discuss the proposed budget that's been presented to us. I think we're discussing all funds that day except water and sewer.
Correct.
So we'll have presentations from our various department heads about their departments, allow us to ask questions of them. And then the next session workshop will be a week from Wednesday at 4:00, which time we'll review water and sewer. And then we come back on October 27th. And I think at that time we look to make a determination whether we'll accept the budget as presented to us, or whether we suggest some modifications to it. But on behalf of council, if you take the time to look at the detailed budget that was presented to the community, it's on our website, it's been presented to us. And we made this comment last year. This is as thorough a presentation to a municipal body that I've seen in any of my, the 20 years I worked in public schools, years I've had interest in city government and keeping an eye on things as a private citizen. It speaks volumes to the work done by our management team led by Fonda. So, thank you. We have one public hearing tonight regarding an ordinance to amend Chapter 221 entitled Zoning, Section 221-8, entitled Zoning Map Parcels 48-78-9-13 and 48.071-4-27.2 to be rezoned from adaptive reuse to residential commercial mixed use. It's going to be Bill 999, and I will open that public hearing now. If anyone attending in person would like to speak regarding the public hearing, please come down to the podium and you will have 5 minutes to speak. Now, if anyone attending remotely would like to speak regarding the public hearing, please use the raised hand feature in the upper right-hand corner of your screen. You will have 5 minutes to speak.
I do not see any hands raised, Mayor.
So I declare this public hearing closed. That brings us to personal appearance. At this time, if anyone attending in person would like to address council, please come down to the podium and you will have 5 minutes.
Hello, City Council. My name is Robert. I live within the city of Augsburg. Robert Van Horn. So I just came down to say that I haven't been here in a while. I just like to thank you all as a citizen of Augsburg. Thank you for what you're doing with beautification when it comes to that. The Riverside, St. Lawrence. You know, it looks beautiful down there. I just hope that the Oswegatchie doesn't get forgotten. Sidewalks down there and the fence, the metal fence down there, just it's a little ragged. You know, I can't really see over the river like I used to, you know. Also, just really wanted to say thank you. And there was one other thing. There's a couple of no parking beside the street on Jefferson Ave. It's a school zone. You can't read the signs, and I just don't want anybody to get a ticket for not being able to read a sign or something, you know, like that. But other than that, that's pretty much it. Thank you.
Thank you, Robin. Now, if anyone attending remotely would like to address council, please use the raise hand feature. The city clerk will recognize only one person at a time, and you will have 5 minutes.
The first individual is registered as Wendy Hamilton, and I will unmute that individual now. It appears you are self-muted.
Good evening. I want to express my appreciation for seeing the budget numbers that have been presented tonight. But I also, in looking ahead on the agenda, I see that you're going to discuss the splash pool. And I was amazed to see that, in fact, there's some consideration of possibly going over budget by adding some fixture to one of the packages in the splash pool. And given our financial situation, I'm just wondering whether that's maybe just due diligence in providing all the options with what to do with unspent funds, as indicated by the original packages that were presented. Also, that particular fixture looks like a accident waiting to happen. It looks climbable. And so it's not something I would think would be appropriate for a splat for that area if it's not going to be patrolled or, you know, guarded by a lifeguard or whatever. But I'm just confused as to why we would even consider expending money that we don't have. Thanks.
Thank you.
I do not see any other hands raised, Mayor.
That brings us to correspondence.
Excuse me, Your Honor. There are a number of neighbors here to the Ford Street property, and I don't think they understood that they were supposed to speak under the public hearing and that it happened. So I just wanted to bring attention that they still could speak under public comments about that, even though the public hearing is closed.
I think the board of us thought that the discussion kind of explaining what was going to happen.
Okay, that'll be the next.
No,
Well, it'll be at this meeting, but
no, it's on for action for.
it's not for action for tonight.
It's voted on. Yeah, it will be, actually, it's our first item of action, Bill 99, that we'll be discussing once we complete following correspondence and the consent agenda. So at this point, with personal appearance still in play, if you'd like the opportunity to address council, you may do so.
Yeah, I guess.
Yes, please. Thank you, Your Honor.
guess, our question was just, or at least I'm just speaking for myself. My, question was, what is the purpose of the rezoning for these properties? And, what is the, United Health owns the property, right? So why are they trying to rezone it? What is the intended use for the property?
Okay, and we don't answer at this time, but it'll be a point we discuss when it comes to council for discussion.
Okay.
Okay, we don't have a give and take at this point.
So the question is, what's it going to contain? What's it?
Yeah, just I guess, how does it affect us as like neighbors and stuff, if it gets rezoned?
Just so we don't.
It's not, because me personally, I don't understand the current zoning or what it's getting changed to, just my own ignorance. Right? Just trying to understand what the ramifications are if it gets rezoned. Somebody puts it.
Yeah, we can take time to explain.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Very good. All right, so that brings us to correspondence. We do have one letter this evening.
Yes, dear Mayor Michael J. Tooley, when I learned about how many communities protect their citizens and local environment by transitioning to organic land care in parks and other public places, I asked why we can't do the same in our own community. Pesticides used in parks, playing fields, and other public places threaten our health, especially that of our children who are closer to the ground and have greater exposure. Pesticides and chemical fertilizers run off, finding their way to streams. They also threaten pollinators who are at risk from multiple threats. Communities no longer need to figure out how to do this alone. Beyond Pesticides, Parks for a Sustainable Future program aims to bridge the gaps resulting from staffing constraints and tight budgets, allowing communities to pilot the transition to organic land care on 2 public sites. As we celebrate National Public Lands Day, I urge you to email sustainableparks@beyondpesticides.org or call Beyond Pesticides at 202-543-5450 to get started. Thank you. Sincerely, Joel F.
That brings us to our consent agenda. That the claims as enumerated in general fund warrant number 19-2025 in the amount of $719,780.01, and library warrant number 19-2025 in the amount of $0, and capital fund warrant number 19-2025 in the amount of $116,364.58, and community development fund warrant number 19-2025 in the amount of $37.99, and community renewal fund warrant number 19-2025 in the amount of $0 as audited, and the same hereby are ordered paid. I so move.
Second.
Kathy, please call the roll.
Mayor Tooley,
Yes?
Counselor Selly,
Yes.
Counselor Powers,
Yes.
Counselor Scamperly,
Yes.
Counselor Stevenson,
Yes.
Counselor Tebow,
Yes.
Counselor Trim, approved.
We do not have any appointments tonight, so that brings us to items for council action. Our first item of business will be read by City Manager Conley.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I don't know if this is working or not, but give it a shot. An ordinance to amend Chapter 221 entitled zoning, Section 221-8 entitled zoning map parcels number 48.078-9-113 and number 48.071-4-27.2 to be rezoned from adaptive reuse to residential commercial mixed use.
I'll move it.
Second.
So, Father, you take the time to answer the questions that were posed to us.
Sure, I'll do my best to try and answer them. So different parcels are zoned for different uses. This is a building that has been vacant for quite a while. And so the planning board and council had determined to put the use on this adaptive reuse to try and get some type of an institutional use of that, because it's an institutional. It's generally an institutional building, right? So, but what we've noticed over some time in discussing that parcel is most of the buildings around that, certainly that face Ford Street, are zoned commercial residential. And it is the recommendation of my office to change the zoning on that in the hopes that we can put those 2 parcels back on the tax rolls a little bit quicker. I think there is somebody who's interested in the parcel to purchase. I may not get the
use is perfect, but I do believe it's for some residential apartments and potentially on the Ford Street side, maybe some office space or some apartments. There's quite a bit of parking there, so we're hoping that that's not disruptive to anybody. But the point of the matter is that building is probably best zoned as residential / commercial mixed use to try and get that building back on the tax rolls and not be vacant anymore. So that's kind of the thought process behind it. And it's consistent with the zoning of the surrounding buildings.
Questions or council?
If I'm not mistaken, the adaptive reuse zoning came about when Step by Step was in the process of purchasing Lincoln School. I don't really understand all of it, but what are the restrictions on the adaptive use zoning that would prohibit it from being used residential?
So I can't say that I'm a planning expert on this, but adaptive reuse generally is for like an institutional use, like a United Helpers or a Step by Step. And at this point, for the parcels that we're talking about, there doesn't seem to be any institutional uses. They haven't been able to sell the building for a while for that use. So changing the zoning on it likely will make it more attractive to developers who are doing non-institutional uses. And again, very consistent with the zoning of the buildings around that area, especially on the Ford Street side.
Any other questions or comments from council? All right, I will note that as a party of interest, as I live across the street from the two parcels in question, I do have a bias about the action being considered tonight, and therefore I will abstain from the vote. Kathy, please call the vote.
Excuse me, Your Honor, I also am a neighbor to that property, so I will also abstain from my vote as well.
What I can share is that there is a developer interested in purchasing the property. I don't believe I'm at liberty to say, nor am I 100% sure that the deal is going to go through. So I wouldn't want to publicly put anybody into play. But I understand that, if this rezoning were to happen, that there is somebody who would be interested in the property.
Anything else, council?
I'd like to see the property turned into some nice apartments, and office space, rather than sit there vacant, tax rolls. And hopefully it's a developer that thinks about the neighborhood and has a real interest in Ogden's. I'm sure they do.
Currently not on the tax rolls.
Correct. United Helpers is a nonprofit, and that was nonprofit oriented business. So yeah, it's not.
I'm somewhat comforted by the fact that it's not going to be institutional. It's not going to be institutional. It's not going to be working through state or federal agency to house most of the homeless that we have. Not that I have anything against that, but recognizing the neighborhood. I don't know if this is prudent, but can we table this until we get maybe a little more information from the potential buyer? Or confident?
Quite frankly, if you were to do that, that could be considered spot zoning, and that is not what we're trying to do here. What we're trying to do is.
No, I got you.
Okay.
Yeah.
Sure. Spot zoning is basically saying, here's a parcel and we're going to change it because we want to change this for a specific reason. Now, what we're doing is we're taking a look at this parcel. We're saying that it needs to be congruent with the other zoning in the areas. And if it happens to yield development because of that decision, then it becomes a much more positive decision.
I guess my only thought with that is that it would behoove council to know that what all the uses could be with residential business use there. So it's not just apartments, it's not just, it could be other uses. There's a full litany of uses that it could be. So decision should be based on all of the uses that could be made there and not just for one developer. So that's a concern, I think, that if council has questions or making assumptions based on it being apartments or based on it being something else, that it would be better information to be had before decisions.
I didn't. No, I'm not. Not recommending. I was asking, I was more or less asking, but it's spot zoning is familiar with it.
I don't think this case would be spot zoning, only if we were particularly doing it for one use, one person, but for additional information with possible uses, if it were adaptive reuse, which we have many parcels that are adaptive reuse in the city, to the proposed zoning change. I think that's the only question would be, and it wouldn't be spot zoning if that would happen. But again, my business is right across the street and I'm there more than I'm home. So I do have a reason to abstain.
If council is looking to table this to find out what that developer has in mind, that is not something that I think we should present to council. It becomes spot zoning at that point in time. So tabling it for that reason, I think might not be the best thing to do.
That's why I'm not.
Understood, but to Council Stevenson's point, would there be interest in tabling to get more information about the actual potential uses for what's being requested in the action? Just to educate council and the public of, here are the type of uses that fall under this zone.
And I think we heard from neighbors tonight that they wanted to hear more before they could speak also. So they really can't speak to something that hasn't been explained in detail to them at this point. I don't mean to speak for the neighbors, but I think more information when we're changing zoning, and as many of us, I did serve on the zoning board for quite some time. Once we change zoning, it's not an easy thing to change back. So I think more information would be good just to make sure that we're not basing it on coming back on the tax rolls, because just because we change the use of it doesn't mean it will definitely come back on the tax rolls.
I think that because it's an adaptive use, currently that was probably spot zoning and making it commercial residential, lining up the entire neighborhood, Ford Street. I trust management on this, that it's a better way to market the property itself. Because if you leave it as adaptive use, that's going to be another institution. If anybody's even interested, and could potentially be worse for the neighborhood than trying to market it as perhaps office with apartments and things of that nature.
So that, and I think that's, Counselor, that's where our question's coming in. That is not necessarily what adaptive reuse always means. It is a streamlined zoning process and targeted properties within the city. And if you look at the map, all the blue ones were adaptive reuse. And those are all adaptive reuse because they were properties that were considered unique to the area. And so they would have an opportunity to have a more streamlined zoning process, et cetera. It doesn't necessarily mean that they would be off the tax rolls or institutional use only.
But they can be.
They can be, but
Certainly.
but they also could be under business commercial use too, or residential business. That could also be something that is off the tax rolls owned by a not-for-profit as well. That's why I just say I don't think it's a bad idea just to get a presentation on what adaptive reuse is and what the next step is, and then make a decision. I'm not saying that council shouldn't support it. I'm just saying that we should be basing it on the exact information instead of interpretations.
So I am prepared right now to read from the code on permitted uses for residential, commercial, mixed use, if that's helpful to council. I have it pulled up here.
Thank you.
Please do that.
So we have residential uses, multifamily residential development, And for those of you at home, this is from section 221-17. So multifamily residential development, community residence, home occupation. Public uses, public facility, museum, library, convention center, nonprofit service, or fraternal organization, religious institution, non-commercial indoor or outdoor recreation. Service uses, office, personal services, in parentheses, hair, tanning, laundry, travel, etc., and office businesses. Services/sales, professional services, in parentheses, legal, medical, accounting, etc., and daycare. Funeral home, bank. Commercial/retail uses, bed and breakfast and inn, hotel/motel/resort, coffee/cafe, bakery, butcher shop, gift or craft shop, art gallery/studio, sporting goods sales, photography, publishing and printing, convenience store, furniture sales, liquor store, book, magazine, and newspaper sales, sporting goods, theater, amusement facilities, video or audio related sales, florist/greenhouse, memorials, indoor commercial recreation, gasoline filling station, car wash.
Thank you.
Fonda, what are the restrictions on adaptive? Do you have the same section on adaptive reuse?
I'm gonna have to find that, sir, if you'll give me some time.
I wish it could do that, but I'm tending to support this because it brings the property into compliance with that section of Ford Street. However, I'm not sure that it does for Hamilton Street, which to my way of thinking, that building impacts Hamilton Street more than it does Ford.
So there isn't in the code a delineated list. So what I will share with council is the purpose. The purpose of this district is to, one, recognize the public, quasi-public, and institutional nature of particular parcels of land and provide standards and guidelines for their continued use and future adaptive reuse. Two, to ensure that the development is within the district and will be compatible with surrounding zoning districts and uses. And three, promote development, community compatibility, and economic development by allowing the adaptive reuse of existing buildings and or land uses, which may have become obsolete after public review. Adaptive reuse permits a wider range of land uses to be available to existing buildings and uses for the purpose of extending their useful life.
So essentially, under adaptive reuse, anything in the world's permissible as long as the zoning board goes along with it.
I think that's a good way of putting it. Yeah, you have to go through the application process, but you're right. As long as the zoning board of appeals gives it its thumbs up, you're probably going to be okay.
So just one quick question. So I looked up the zoning map on the Dank Authority map. And so currently, the front half of that property is commercial business, but the rear property is a different use. There's two parcels there.
There are two parcels, and the information that we have is that both parcels are adaptive reuse.
Right, but the comment was, I'm just trying to understand.
Yep.
The comment was that it's, so it is in cohesiveness with the rest of the properties on Ford Street, and that's true. All of it is the same going down Ford Street, but the parcel to the rear of that parcel is not commercial business. It's the buffer. It becomes the next zone over. So
That
we're
is,
gonna bring that, we're gonna bring the whole parcel into one.
that is true, but it's one building, or actually two buildings connected into one. It is two parcels, but one building. I know you're familiar with it, but, so the ask is for both parcels because the building basically occupies two parcels. And that's not unusual in the city where two parcels occupies one building.
How old is that? United Helpers say both sides have that as a child through United. Child, I don't care there, correct?
It's the Development Authority of the North Country, so that map is usually. And our zoning code hasn't changed there.
I've talked to the potential developer, and he wants to do some nice stuff. Obviously, a deal hasn't been made yet, but he needs this to happen, of course. You can't have a boundary in the middle of the building, and that's what his issue is. So,
Any other questions or comments? from council?
I think that's true, but what we want to think about is, do we want to overregulate this parcel? And if you have an adaptive reuse zoning, then it has to go through a process to be approved. And that may not be applicable or the best maneuver here. That in my estimation, the better course of action is change the zoning, follow those permitting rules. They're much less stringent because the code already narrows them to certain uses, whereas the adaptive use has amorphous of uses. And so you have to go through a stringent permitting process to make sure that it fits all the different categories that it needs to fit in. And so from a development standpoint, we probably need to get away from adaptive reuse where it makes sense so that we can move along with these parcels quicker and get them developed. It's a good use of zoning when you need it to be broad. But when there's a situation where all the properties around it are zoned commercial residential, that property at this point probably should be commercial residential from a development standpoint.
Did we get a recommendation from the planning board or the zoning board?
Not from the zoning board, but from the planning board, and the planning board was unanimous in favor.
Thank you.
Okay, I believe our discussion has been relatively thorough, so for that reason, I will call the question. Kathy, please call the roll.
Counselor Stevenson,
Abstain.
Counselor Tebow,
Yes.
Counselor Trim,
We just called the question on the vote.
Mayor Tully,
I abstain.
Counselor Selly,
Yes.
Counselor Powers,
Yes.
Counselor Scamperly,
Absolutely.
yes.
approved.
Our next order of business will be read by City Manager Fonda Cronis.
A resolution calling for a public hearing regarding a local law to allow members of council to participate in meetings via video conferencing.
I'll move that.
Any discussion? Kathy, please call the roll.
Counselor Tebow,
Yes.
Counselor Trim, Mayor Tully,
Yes?
Counselor Selly,
Yes.
Counselor Powers,
Yes.
Counselor Scamperly,
Yes.
Counselor Stevenson,
Yes.
approved.
Our next order of business will be read by City Manager Fonda Cronis.
A resolution calling for a public hearing regarding an ordinance to amend the administrative regulations of the city of Ogdensburg to establish a video conferencing policy.
Make that motion.
Any questions, discussion? Kathy, please call the roll.
Counselor Trim, Mayor Tully,
Yes?
Counselor Selly,
Yes.
Counselor Powers,
Yes.
Counselor Scamperly,
Yes.
Counselor Stevenson,
Yes.
Counselor Tebow,
Yes.
approved.
Our next item of business will be read by City Manager Fonda Jones.
A resolution designated Ogdensburg City Council lead agency for wastewater system improvement project.
Questions, comments? Kathy, please call the roll.
Mayor Tulley,
Yes.
Counselor Selly,
Yes.
Counselor Powers,
Yes.
Counselor Scamperly,
Yes.
Counselor Stevenson,
Yes.
Counselor Tebow,
Yes.
Counselor Trim, approved.
Our next item of business will be read by City Manager Fonda Jones.
A resolution determining no adverse environmental impacts under seeker for wastewater system improvement project.
That,
Second.
Questions, or comments? Kathy, please call the roll.
Counselor Selly,
Yes.
Counselor Powers,
Yes.
Counselor Scamperly,
yes.
Counselor Stevenson,
Yes.
Counselor Tebow,
Yes.
Counselor Trim, Mayor Tulley,
Yes.
approved.
Our next item of business will be read by City Manager Fonda Jones.
A resolution calling for a public hearing regarding an ordinance to amendment section 149-6 of the Ogdensburg Municipal Code entitled Use of Marina.
That,
Second.
Questions, comments?
Will you just have a little background on that?
Sure, this is to correct a typographical error.
Thank you.
Kathy, please call the roll.
Counselor Powers,
Yes.
Counselor Scamperly,
yes.
Counselor Stevenson,
Yes.
Counselor Tebow,
Yes.
Counselor Trim,
Yes.
Mayor Tulley,
Yes.
Counselor Selly,
Yes.
approved.
Our next item of business will be read by Police Chief Mark Collins.
Move that,
Second.
Questions or comments? Kathy, please call the roll.
Counselor Scamperly,
yes.
Counselor Stevenson,
Yes.
Counselor Tebow,
Yes.
Counselor Trim, Mayor Tulley,
Yes.
Counselor Selly,
Yes.
Counselor Powers,
Yes.
approved.
Next item of business will be read by City Manager Fonda Jones.
A resolution approving an intergovernmental agreement for the provision of endpoint protection and response services from New York State.
That,
Questions, comments? Kathy, please call the roll.
Counselor Stevenson,
Yes.
Counselor Tebow,
Yes.
Counselor Trim, Mayor Tulley,
Yes.
Counselor Selly,
Yes.
Counselor Powers,
Yes.
Counselor Scamperly,
yes.
approved.
Our next item of business will be read by City Manager Fonda Jones.
A resolution declaring Ogdensburg City Council lead agency for city pool rehabilitation project.
Second,
Questions or comments? Kathy, please call the roll.
Counselor Tebow,
Yes.
Counselor Trim, Mayor Tulley,
Yes.
Counselor Selly,
Yes.
Counselor Powers,
Yes.
Counselor Scamperly,
yes.
Counselor Stevenson,
Yes.
approved.
And at the request of management, we have a resolution coming from the floor tonight. As such is the case, it will require at least 5 yes votes to approve. I will introduce that, a resolution calling for a public hearing regarding a local law establishing a 6-month moratorium prohibiting the review and approval of applications and permits for battery energy storage systems in the city of Ogdensburg.
Move that. Second, yes.
Yes. And Fonda, would you elaborate on this, please?
Sure. I've received a couple of inquiries regarding bringing battery energy storage facilities to the city. I believe our municipal code and zoning are not as crisp as they need to be on this. I think there are public safety issues that we haven't had a chance to consider. And before this gets too out of control, it makes sense to me to ask council to consider a 6-month moratorium on these while we have the opportunity to have the planning board and the management team look into what the challenges are from a public safety side. Certainly, I welcome economic development, but we need to do it smartly and we need to do it by protecting the public.
Any questions or comments?
It's my belief that there are some severe public safety issues with this. I don't want to say no, but I'd like to be assured that within 6 months, we can come up with some type of general idea, recommendation, something as to whether there are places in the city that it can be done safely.
I would agree, and that's, the goal would be to get it done within 6 months. If we can't, I will come back to council and ask for additional time.
I just, I've seen other municipalities, they just pass moratorium after moratorium after moratorium. That's not the way I want to do business. I'd like to see some type of progress on it within the 6 months.
Understood.
I'm assuming this is a result of some of the recent incidents, especially it's, you know, it's been happening at a fire, I think at Casella. Lithium ion batteries and for a firefighter, you know, those are tough to fight. They're tough to fight back on. So I think the more information we have, the better.
Anyone else? Kathy, please call the roll.
Counselor Trim, Mayor Tully,
Yes?
Counselor Selly,
Yes.
Counselor Powers,
Yes.
Counselor Scamperly,
Yes.
Counselor Stevenson,
Yes.
Counselor Tebow,
Yes.
approved.
That brings us to old business. Does anyone have any old business this evening? Hearing none, that brings us to new business. Does anyone have any new business this evening? That brings us to items for discussion, and we'll begin with City Manager Fonda Cronin.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think as everyone on the dais is aware, the governor has made it a point to say that she would like NYPA to build a nuclear reactor facility in upstate New York somewhere. NYPA and the state are certainly looking for communities who are looking to have that. There's certainly safety concerns that you might have, but also economic development opportunity. And I think based on the conversation that, you know, I would look for counsel and guidance as to whether this community should be considered and if we should put our foot forward on that. And although I don't necessarily expect an answer tonight, I think this is a way to get the dialogue going.
Any initial reaction to Fonda's request?
I think it would be a great economic boom for us, but I question whether there's a suitable site within the city. But I would encourage something close by if it's actually going to be seriously considered.
It's my understanding that this isn't the traditional giant, you know, thing you see at Oswego type facility. These are modern, safe, as safe as nuclear power can be. They're not like we see on TV.
I think it's going to be different because, you know, that model that you're referring to is probably 50 years old at this point. And I'm not so sure Ogdensburg has the infrastructure to be able to say, pick us. But if council is interested in us moving forward and in being an interested community, you know, I'd like the opportunity to be able to at least get that out there to the powers that be, so they could do an evaluation and include us in that. And if council feels that it's not the right thing for Ogdensburg, that's absolutely fine too. We'll just keep our mouths quiet on that and let it pass as it would.
I'd just like to know more and get more educated on it myself. Till then, I have probably more reservations, so.
Has NYPA put out a request for proposals or request for letters of interest yet?
I don't know if it's out yet, but it is imminent if it hasn't.
So I'd be curious, once it's out, what the deadline is for submission, consider letters of interest. So once we have that information.
And I think the information is important to have, because if we say no and it is an economic boom to us, and then it's located 30 miles from us, would we still have any impact if there were any problems? And now we lost the economic impact of that. So I would like to get some more information.
I'm no nuclear expert, but I will put together what's out there for you.
Thank you.
I think Scott Gray has quite a bit of information, probably share.
He's certainly been active in that.
I'm sure they'd be available on his website. But yes, he has been a strong supporter of nuclear, as we're trying to educate his constituency about that in case there are municipalities who have an interest in pursuing this type of facility.
Other than NYPA, the authority, New York Power Authority, what other entities would be involved in this? Obviously, the governor's office, but ESD or I imagine everybody's gonna have their fingers in it in some capacity, right?
Well, we're talking a multi-million-dollar project, so certainly there's going to be some state support, probably some federal support. DEC will be involved, as well as FERC and in the federal side of things as well. So I think just about everybody's going to have their fingers in it in some way, shape, or form. I can't remember the last time the state built one, so they're probably on some. They're going to have to dust off some books to go through the regulatory process.
But I do think the government has directed Michael to take the lead. All right, next to DRI Town.
Sure. I'm pleased to announce that this coming Monday, October 20th at 6 p.m., right here in City Hall and Council Chambers, we will be hosting a DRI Town Hall. We're hoping that members of council will come and join us, and as many members of the public that will be interested in doing it, to talk about the downtown revitalization, boundaries, different projects that people would like to see, what we would like our downtown to look like in the future as part of an engagement process for the DRI application process. So come on out. Should be a lot of fun on Monday, October 20th at 6 p.m. right here in council chambers. Come one, come all.
Next, discussion about the splash pad as part of the pool rehab.
Certainly. At our next meeting, we're going to have our designers come in and give council a first look at what their vision and concept is for the entire pool, from the bathhouse to the pool itself, and then to the splash pad portion of this pool rehab project. But what the management team and I have discussed is, what do we do next year? Because there won't be a pool to be opened, right? We're going to be working on the pool. We'll start as early as we can, but construction of that pool is certainly going to take more than a couple of months. It will be almost an entire construction season. So what we came up with is a recommendation to council is to build the splash pad first and have that operational in the summer of 2026. So residents, especially children, have a place to go and have fun and cool off, most importantly. That poses some challenges because, as Shane brings up in our discussions, we could have 30, 40, 50 kids come in. And is there going to be enough room in the splash pad or splash pads to accommodate all of that? Does that make sense to do? So what I thought I would do is talk a little bit about the splash pad, give council some options, and have that discussion, because it really comes down to how council wants to make that decision. Do you want to make it now? Well, because what we have to do is order the equipment now if we want to be open for next year. We don't really, we're up against it. It's hard to believe, but it's already the middle of October. And so orders for next year have to come in, or do we want to wait and maybe get some more information, i.e. cost information? We'll talk about that a little bit. So I direct council to the little deck that says New York Swims project update. And for those of us who don't know what a splash pad is, on the second page there, that's a splash pad. You see a diagram of children playing on a concrete pad with different units out there that are just throwing water out there to have fun and kids run around and have a blast. We did this in Watkins Glen when I was there, and I'll tell you the usage was off the charts. It was really great to see. It was a great addition to the community. If we go to the next page, I have a very unofficial conceptual drawing. As a matter of fact, that pool and that bathhouse are exactly as they are today. What you see is there are those three black arrows, and the concept that I believe you're going to be pitched is to develop the splash pad in phases. One of our concerns was having enough space, and certainly, we don't have unlimited funds, so we can't build the largest splash pad ever created by man. But what we can do is create the opportunity to build one or two splash pads now, and then lay the infrastructure for additional splash pads in the future. And so this is what this conceptual drawing does, is it shows you those three pads there. and what it could look like over time. Very unofficial. I'm sure you'll see something different next week, but at least it gives you kind of a picture on what to expect. And so what the management team did in working with our consultant is we priced out a few packages we thought were appropriate and cost effective. And so we have pictures here of what they look like and the costs for 2025, not 2026, because as soon as the calendar changes, these prices are going to go up. But the 2025 costs for some different packages. And you can see the first one there is package E, little over $177,000. And you can see the fixtures there. The next page is package F, a little bit less cost, 161,000 and change. But you can see a little bit less robust fixtures there. Package I is the Cadillac of the group, $212,000 and change. And you can see that is much more robust. If we turn the page to the next one, Shane was really good when we were talking to the consultants about saying, hey, is there any way we can just add some fixtures and maybe get something additional at maybe not quite those prices? And so the consultants came up with this. It's called the Aqua Hedra. Although we were hoping we could get something as an add-on for 40,000 or 50,000 or 60,000. That is not the case, unfortunately, but it is significantly less than any of those other packages. And it looks like it's pretty nice at $119,000. So we would consider that an economical addition to anything that council may consider. So if we turn the page, that's the view again of that conceptual drawing on what a full pad would look like with that add-on, right? So you can see the larger pad that would house package A, F, or I, and then the smaller pad, which would house that Aqua Hedra. Just to kind of give you a visual, and it's connected by, the different sidewalks and those kinds of things and shade structures, just to give you kind of a perspective on things. So there are a number of questions that I'm hoping council can give us a little guidance on. And the first question is, are we interested in making sure that there is some type of water facility in the city for 2026? And I think the easy answer is of course, right? But if the answer is of course and we want to move forward, it gets more complicated because then we have to decide, all right, what's our budget? Can we go over the budget? Those kinds of things. So what I'll do is I'll talk about the numbers a little bit. Then I think we can maybe circle back to the first question, because what I can't do is, this is a project that's in phases. You've got the boathouse, you've got the mechanicals, you've got the pool, you've got the splash pad, and each one of those has a different budget attached to it. And what I can't tell you is the pool's going to come in $50,000 under, so you can use it on the splash pad, or the mechanicals are going to come in $100,000. I can't tell you that right now because I don't have those numbers. But if we don't order the splash pad within a week or so, we probably aren't going to get into the 2026 year, which means we lose the pricing and then we lose the ability to have the splash pad up in 2026. So I might be asking you to make a decision with imperfect information. And although we do it all the time, it's not comfortable no matter where we're sitting. So let me just go over the numbers real quick.
I'm going to apologize first. I got to leave. I got to go somewhere. But based on reading the update and what we have here, just my 2 cents is I like the Cadillac, but I really don't want to go over budget. So I'm thinking I'm willing to even put it off the actual building of the splash pad if possible. But I do like to get the pricing now. So but I have to go, unfortunately, and I apologize. I apologize for interrupting you.
No problem. Thank you.
Thank you.
So the budget that we have for the splash pad portion is $265,000. And any of those packages that we talked about, E, F, or I, all fall within that budget range, right? Obviously, the Cadillac plan falls the least under budget. And then package F, which is the least expensive, has more room under the budget. So we could add one of those packages and be very safe in the budget. And as your budget person, I would say that is the way to go. But unfortunately, I wear another hat, and that hat is your community development person. And it is very likely, given the capital challenges that we have and that $15 million I talked about earlier today, we may never get an opportunity to circle back and do improvements on the splash pad, at least in the next 10 years or so. So you may want to consider going a bit over budget on this. And so what we did was we put a couple of combinations together, packages plus the header you can see there, and then maybe a couple of packages together, and you can see the over budget amounts there. So again, as your budget person, I say stay within there, but I wear more than one hat. And it's certainly a fair statement to make that council may want to consider. When you think about it, it's a $3.1 million project going 60, 13,000, 29,000 over budget is not a lot of money. And there could be savings on some of the other phases. What I can't do at this moment is tell you if there are. And unfortunately, we're up against it from an ordering standpoint. So if council determines that the most important thing is to have the splash pad open in 2026, then we've got to order relatively soon, within the next week or so. And that basically would require a direction in which to go in. And so when it comes to money things, council is preeminent. I'm simply providing you all the information, and you decide which direction you want to go in, and then we'll execute that decision.
Question I have, you talk about doing the project in phases as it relates to the splash pads. Does that mean that if council supported a combination of package, any of the packages plus the aqua header, would they both be done for use next year, or would one be done in a later phase?
So the goal would be, if you're doing the splash pad, whatever your decision is on the splash pad, all of it would be done. Sure. We have a grant in. I can't guarantee we'll get it. We'll know in December, but it's too late for us to make this decision today. Yeah, and again, we could get the grant, we might not. I can't assume we're getting it, so. We can't ask for donations as a community. Yeah, as a government, we can't do that.
So I guess circling back to question one, does council want to recommend to management that we have a splash pad operation in 2026?
I support that.
I'd like to see that, but I also have a couple thoughts on the whole thing here. I'm looking at the conceptual drawing, and I'm not sure we need 3 splash pads or even 2. I'm assuming there's going to be some type of supervisory when the splash pad's open. And we have one large splash pad that could probably be supervised by one person. If I've got 3 with trees and stuff in between them, I gotta do something more than that. And in my travels the last few years, I've seen a lot of splash pads. The one at Corning is just a large concrete pad. There's like 3 or 4 bubblers coming up out of it. Kids seem to have as much fun there as they do with all the fancy equipment. I will agree that some of the water towers and stuff like that seem to be attractive. The kids enjoy that, but I'm just wondering how overloaded the stuff we want to make the thing. You know, my thought is 1 or 2 simple structures might be better than having 5 or 6 or 7 or 10. Oops, I'm sorry, 10 other ones. So I'm just thinking at this time, and I really think, based on what I've seen, the costs are reasonable compared to the overall cost of the project. I'm just thinking about, is this conceptual thing, where these going to fit? Would be one big one be better, or 2 or 3 or whatever? Just my thoughts. So I wait till the guy comes and presents to us and see thoughts are there.
Sure. So what I can tell you is that we've been in contact with Watertown, who recently did some work, and what they expressed to us, Shane, you can certainly correct me if I don't get this perfectly right, is that whatever they built wasn't enough. And obviously they're a bigger place, but they also have a much bigger splash pad than we have. So we were concerned with making sure that, you know, if the Boys and Girls Club does bring a bus and has 30 or 40 kids, you know, are we able to accommodate that is, you know, one of our concerns. You know, we know that it's not going to be used 24/7 and have, you know, full capacity, but, you know, in those peak times at say 2 o'clock in the afternoon when it's 95 degrees out, you know, are we able to service, you know, the demand? So that's where they came up with, let's do this pad thing. Let's understand that the budget is really small for the splash pad. And let's figure out a way to be able to expand if necessary. I mean, if the demand is there, it may behoove us to really get more aggressive on grant funds or put it in our capital plan to build some more things. So
I'm assuming we're basing anticipated use on daily use. It'd be somewhere around the pool's getting daily at a maximum load.
I think that's probably.
Did they put them near their pools? Because I know like in Corning, it's just in a big plaza. It's in a big plaza and it's not anywhere near either one of their pools. So you're thinking too large path for that?
ENF?
I believe Shane is referring to packages E and I. Those are the two most expensive, and that would put you $122,000 over budget. As you can see, I did shade the recommendation. On the left-hand side is the recommendation from your budget guy, and on the right-hand side is the recommendation from your community development person.
Well, we've been speaking about a splash pad for a number of years. It's been on and off the table with discussion with the city rec. And I know Watertown, I too spoke to people in Watertown about the splash pad, and it's really robust. And kids go there all the time because it's not like swimming. Like you can go down and have a picnic and just run through the water. It's usually open more hours than what the pool would be, so it would be more accessible on times that we had to be closed with the pool. So I would like to go forward with it, and I just would have to figure out where in the budget part I would be most comfortable. I would love to have the biggest and the best, but my other conservative part is saying maybe somewhere in the middle.
These don't require lifeguards, just supervisors.
That is correct. Now, this project, we have not identified where the local share is going to come from. If I were a betting man, I would probably say that I will recommend to council, although don't take this to the bank yet because I haven't run it by Angela, that we would borrow for this $627,000, which is the local share, and pay it back in 5 years through a ban. That would be my initial gut feeling on this. So any dollars above and beyond that local share would be part of the ban and increase the debt service for those 5 years. Now, if there are offsetting savings on some of the other phases, that would bring that number down. And if there are situations where we can do the work in-house, and we think there are going to be some of those circumstances, I just can't quantify them right now, that will also bring that number down. Again, this is a decision that I'm asking you to make with imperfect information. And as much as I wish I had the data in front of us, I don't have it yet. And for that, my apologies. It'd be one or the other. Yeah, yeah. You know, you're talking $7,000 delta between the two of them. I don't. That's a rounding error in the grand scheme of a $3.1 million project.
We did have a question from a citizen tonight about one of the structures, kids climbing on it. I haven't heard anything negative from any of the other municipalities that have a splash pad with any of the proposed structures on it. There hasn't been any reason to be concerned with that.
I'm not really sure how you would climb up a smooth pole like that. I mean, people are creative without any question, but these are certainly built with safety in mind.
Thank you.
And I'd like to think, you know, that with appropriate supervision, you know, because I'm thinking the question might be about the ability to climb on the aqueduct. I saw videos of it, it just showed the kids that were playing. Basically, they're just under. It's designed for kids ages 5. But we have nothing in our preliminaries with regards to what the budget might look like for the other parts of the total project.
About 5 minutes before I walked in here, I did get something about the boathouse, and it's right on budget. So there might be $20,000 or $30,000 savings there potentially. I mean, there's always a contingency built in. If you don't need to use it, that becomes part of the savings. But you got to plan for, you know, worst case scenario on these things. So I think we didn't get much help there. I did ask about the pool because that's the big nugget there. That's almost $2 million, and you know, just to try and give you something directionally, they're not ready to give that number yet.
My fear is if we go too small, then it's really going to be overcrowded, and that's when we're going to have some potential issues if we go too small.
Shane, what do you recommend? Ian, okay.
Flooded. No, we're not installing these, the city. Shane's department's not installing these, correct?
That is correct. He will probably do
Oversee.
some of the infrastructure with the water and sewer to try and save some money.
You know, I'm looking at the numbers for certain aspects of it, Shane, and I'm curious to know what you know, recognizing the pool's been up and running for 30 years, right? Band-aiding it with infrastructure issues for the last decade, really, right? You know, do you see anything alarming in any of these that would end up having to require work down the road? I can't imagine that there would be. I mean, it's simply, right. All right.
It'll be fresh water coming in consistently. It won't be being recycled. So there's not a concern of cold with some of the very first splash pads. So I'm more inclined to go with one of the larger units, just because I think we will have a lot of activity with it. And now's the time to do it.
recognizing the popularity, I think three for infrastructure, three, get two done. Maybe down the road, so another. What's their value?
Or more value, you never know.
Or that.
Prices on that.
My concern would be if the other aspects of the project come in, have budget or we can experience one that's there, that we're going to have to fall back on, that might be available if we choose a less expensive option. So we can be prepared to absorb that locally as we go through that.
That's the dilemma.
That doesn't necessarily meet the need. Especially for the pool down
I think that's possible. I don't want to get, the city attorney's okey dokey on that. But I think something similar like that has been done in the past, and it's probably possible. I do plan on having a sponsorship for both the pool and for the splash pad. It's certainly not going to be a lot of money, but certainly over time, every dollar helps to offset some things. As a matter of fact, with the pool closing this year, I reached out to the St. Lawrence Federal Credit Union, and they've pledged $5,000 to sponsor the splash pad. Again, it's not a lot of money, but it's certainly not zero.
Start spraying that number down. Well, I think when we did, I'm sorry, when we did the Lockwood Center, we had sponsorships of the of some of the locker rooms, et cetera, by some of the service clubs, fraternal organizations. So tough times for everybody, but you just never know.
area will be secure, obviously. I mean, it's not going to be an open splash pad at 7 o'clock at night for the walk, We're going to have it fenced in, I'm assuming, right?
Now, the plan is not to have it fenced in at this point. Yeah, we're
So
not
it
doing,
won't be operational, we'll just spit in one, yeah.
we won't be doing another capital project without making sure that cameras are installed.
Right, so listening to the comments by council, it seems the consensus seems to be the package D plus I. Am I correct?
Yes.
Yes.
So I can get direction.
Got it. Thank you for the discussion and the guidance.
Okay, Bob has one more.
One more item. It's a call. We are short 2 members of the Zoning Board of Appeals. Because I'm not necessarily from the community, I don't have a good base of knowledge to be able to approach people. So I'm making a public plea in hopes that council and those in the front row who know everybody in town could possibly see if there's anybody interested in yeah, I'm subtle.
ZBA is a 5-member board.
I believe so, yeah. So we could certainly use a couple of members pretty quick.
So, yeah, so again, if anyone in the community would have interest in at least inquiring about what the responsibilities are on this important board, please contact the city manager or contact me, and we can have some discussion. Any other items for discussion from council? I just have one that relates to the letter that was read tonight, and I'm just curious. I don't need the information tonight, but what is the, if any, the use of pesticides in the public lands owned by the city? If there is pesticide use, to what degree? is it worth considering doing any investigation with regards to organic land care in city properties, and maybe that's already taking place? So no, at least for me, there's no time urgency to get this done. So at some point, I'd like to get some information about our current practices. Right, and so that brings us to citizen participation. At this time, if anyone attending in person would like to address council, please come down to the podium and you will have 2 minutes.
How we doing? Does anyone know why there's not a microphone over the next?
So can we,
Oh, yeah.
can we put that up there?
Not going to change
That one is.
Hi, everyone. The whole splash pad thing here, I don't know, we're in these dire financial situation that we're in here. You guys are talking about, I get it, that the pool's gonna be closed for construction and stuff, but we live on one of the biggest, cleanest freshwater rivers in the world right here, and it's right here, so. The city's having some serious budget problems to go in. It is just really irresponsible to spend money on that right now. And I hate to say it because I want kids to have the splash pad more than anyone. And to sit here and say, well, we should get the one that's the Cadillac of all of them. Well, when you're broke and you're going on a Dodge Neon budget, you don't go to the dealership and try to get a Mercedes. It's not how it goes. It's just not how it is. That's the way the city's been ran for a long time, and it needs to come to an end. To switch gears here on a more personal scenario, I saw recently a citizen was given a ticket for having their boat in the city marina past October 1st. It's an old neighbor of mine, and he explained the scenario to me. He said he's kept his boat for 15 years or something at the city marina, and has always kept it there a week or two past October 1st because he's a fisherman, and that's when the fish bite is in the fall. It's excellent fishing. He was bothered this year, and to make a long story short, he was given a ticket. This past weekend, I dug under the Oswegatchie River, and I used the boat launch that's underneath the Lafayette Street Bridge, the public boat launch. I couldn't help as I headed out there to notice there was 3 or 4 boats parked on city-owned property along the edge of the Maple City Trail. It's not a marina. And then as I started to go down the river, I noticed some meth shacks, a couple of them behind the cemetery and a couple of them on the Bridge and Ports property. And then people out there during the day when you're trying to duck hunt with unregistered boats with bicycles and mountain bikes in them and everything to get back and forth from the property that Chief Kearns knows about it as of this afternoon, but from there back to their shacks out on the river. And they're eroding a very steep hill to build where their little areas are behind a cemetery, where there's been issues with that hill eroding in the past. I don't really want to get into what come out of the side of the hill, but that shouldn't be going on. And here we are bothering people that are trying to keep their boat in the marina a week or two later to go fishing, who's always gotten away with it. But yet, if you want to be a drug addict, you can park your boat for free on city property and go have a shack out on the Bridge and Ports and the church's property on the Oswegatchie River. That's real cute, Along with the way that the daycare, you always tell me to wrap it up. I will when I'm done. Thank you. The daycare providers, just treatment to me, being told I'd be arrested for trespassing for bringing my black lads to the river because you and Fonda don't like me. You guys need to quit treating citizens like shit because it ain't right. But if you're a drug addict, there's all this stuff, government funded Democrat bullshit. Like where you stood,
Please step
okay, in front of these places, right? Step by step, all these places. Yeah, real cute.
I declare the meeting
Real
in
cute.
recess. I ask management to bring the chamber into order.
Both Democrats out of office, Burgess and Sanders goes on. Y'all should be ashamed of yourself.
Anyone in the chambers who'd like to address council? Now, if anyone attending remotely would like to address council, please use the raise hand feature. The city clerk will recognize and unmute one person at a time, and you will have to.
I do not see any hands raised, Mayor.
And we do not have a need for executive session tonight, so I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Meeting adjourned.